Welcome to the Best Kept Business Secret podcast with me, your host, coach, author, and general business geek, Marc Ford. Now, on today's show, 2020 and 2021 were, a bit of a financial shit show for many business owners and entrepreneurs, both here in the UK and for just as many across the world. Now, whilst we can't save the world from a pandemic, what we can do is learn some massive financial lessons in running a business, starting a business, or even saving a business from the last 2 years. So today, I am reaching across the pond to our friends in Canada, where it's my absolute privilege to bring you one of the country's finest financial fitness trainers in the shape of Tracey Bissett. Tracey is on a mission to redefine the world's economic future by increasing the financial literacy of entrepreneurs, which is also known as financial fitness. With over 20 years of experience in the financial services industry, Tracey has helped entrepreneurs and business owners across all industries, both on and offline. And as a financial fitness trainer, Tracey educates and empowers entrepreneurs like you to take control of their lives and their financial lives with some real confidence. As a former executive at TD Bank, one of Canada's big five banks, Tracey has worked with and in support of thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners like you to secure the financing they really needed. This hands-on experience, coupled with her formal financial education, an MBA and Chartered Financial Analyst designation, positions Tracey uniquely to coach us all about all things money, to all things business and entrepreneurial. And on top of that, Tracey is a professor at Centennial College's School of Business and regularly leads speaking engagements to increase financial fitness awareness. So genuinely, this lady really knows her stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Tracey Bissett. Hello, Tracey. How are you?
I am excited to be here. It's really fun to be talking all things biz money and excited to have that chat with you today.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. It's an absolute privilege having you on the show. Let's get straight into it, because I've been telling everybody about how overly qualified you are to be talking to me. Look, obviously we can't get away from this. So it's almost like I'm going to sort of like smash it in the face straight away. As we're coming out of pandemic, you're obviously based there in Canada and you've just gone back into lockdown, I believe.
Yeah.
There have been some huge lessons that I think we've really needed to take a look at. Firstly, how did the pandemic affect you? Not financially, but how did the pandemic, sort of affect you, your business model? Just run us through that.
Really interesting, because when 2020 came, really supported clients, because I'm a coach to business owners of all different industries. Sales are generally under 2 million. So really stepped up, supported them. There was a lot more conversations, not as many sales. 2021 launched some group programs and was doing some more things there. But I found I was waning in terms of my energy and kind of stamina and keeping up with the pandemic. And now that we're into 2022, really trying to get things back on track, get attitude back on track, and really support people in the best way that I know how, which is by helping them make sense of their money and their financial situation. So I didn't realize in 2020 we were going to be in it for such a long haul.
I know it does seem mad looking back on it now that we're into 2022 and we're still sort of like we're still doing it. What were some of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs and business owners realized that they had made as they hit the pandemic? Because from this side of the pond, I saw a few things that I was scratching my head at when people consider themselves business people and are in business. But what kind of mistakes had they made and were slightly shocked that they made?
So one, really not paying attention to their business and their actual results. So people were struggling in some companies and some industries before the pandemic. And then they kind of had a woe is me attitude when the pandemic hit. But unfortunately, you've got to take a reality check of your business. Should you be continuing to pursue things? And so I had a lot of hard conversations with people that, you were struggling if we actually look at the numbers before in a really booming time. And so maybe now is the time to either pivot your business or to kind of say, I'm going to try something else. Certainly lots of shortages of cash. And I was a banker for a lot of my career, as you know. And so definitely through the 2008 financial crisis, we knew that companies who planned performed a lot better. Companies who had cash reserves were a lot stronger. And so many were unprepared coming into the pandemic, going week to week in terms of their cash balances. And we know in Canada, even on the personal side, over 50% of Canadians couldn't pay their bills if their paycheck was missed in 1 week. So there's kind of this pervasive thing that's going on, and that also permeates into business. There wasn't a one impact I can say, because I've certainly seen across industries and within industries, there's those who were really strong, who continued to perform strong. There were those who had setbacks, who actually were able to react really quickly and change things and make some money. And some people actually, I was really pleased to see some of the people I was working with, they were actually able to reduce their revenues and make more money. And that's a testament to when you know your numbers and you actually know what's driving profitability, you can pull the levers and actually make informed decisions. So I know after the pandemic is over and done, they're going to continue with a revised business model that seems them less busy, but making more money and actually having more time for their own lives. And then there were those who kind of put their heads in the sand, who said, well, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to see what happens tomorrow and see what the government's going to do for me. And those are the businesses that are continuing to struggle or who've had to close up shop since the pandemic started.
So why do you think there was such a mindset of people in business that had made so many mistakes going into the pandemic? I mean, it was interesting talking to people when they sort of like said, they're surprised that nobody saw it coming. Well, to be fair, it did actually happen relatively quickly. And the fact that nobody really considered that it was a problem, because it was always a problem in somebody else's country until it hit our own particular countries. I think one of the biggest things that I was really shocked at were the amount of people that did have no cash reserves whatsoever. To the point where, before we came on air, I used the analogy of, if that person was hit by a number 10 bus, who the hell was going to pay the mortgage and who the hell was going to pay the bills? And then when the government did sort of like start shelling out cash, they were the first ones on social media going, damn this government, they haven't given us any money for the last 6 weeks or something like that. But it really wasn't there. It's not the government's place to be giving that sort of cash out, I would suggest morally, because they were just trying to look after the health and safety of the population. So why do you think there is such a mindset of business owners and entrepreneurs not being as financially or cash astute as they could be? And what do you think it's going to, what do you think it's going to take to get to a position where they're a little bit more financially astute? I mean, I would hope a global pandemic might be the answer, but
not going to be for everybody.
It's not, no.
Well, a couple things. So certainly here in Canada, and I'm sure it's no different there, or I hope it would be better. Our school system does a really poor job at teaching finance education. So from early grades up to high school and even in post-secondary. So we're not teaching well on personal finance, and we're certainly not teaching well on business finance. So that's kind of one of the facts. Secondly, people are going into business because they're excellent at what they do. They don't necessarily understand business, or they haven't been trained financially. So they're jumping in, and I find that business owners kind of fall into one or two camps when they're not focused on their numbers. One, if I just sell more, it's going to work out, and I'm going to put my head down and keep pushing, sell stuff. Or secondly, I'm going to defer that and delegate that to my accountant and my bookkeeper, and they're just going to tell me if there's a problem. And so both of those are not okay. So as business owner, you got to be accountable for every area of your business, and financial, that's certainly a primary one, because it's going to drive everything that you do. Thirdly, cash is the lifeblood of your business. If you do not have it, you're not going to be around for very long. So certainly during the 2008 crisis, I saw, and over the years being a lender and risk adjudicator, I saw companies go under in as quick as 90 days. They were highly profitable on paper, so sales greater than expenses, but they weren't collecting anything from their clients, and they didn't have cash reserves or access to credit. And so things just folded very, very quickly. So you take that lack of education, passion for something, but not necessarily thinking they need business skills. And that's how this comes to be. I would hope the pandemic has taught people that, I need to step up my game in terms of my number one, accountability when it comes to the financial side of my business, and actually taking the step to take education and learning and practical implement practical things and routines into the business so this doesn't happen again. And that then leads to cash flow forecasting. That leads to starting an emergency fund. It leads to us knowing what are those drivers of profitability in the business so that we can make changes quickly, and we're not 6 months after our year end looking in the rearview mirror at our last year's financial statement saying, hey, I wonder what happened here. If we look at monthly results, then we can actually take action quickly, and we actually know if there's a problem. I would love to say that business owners come to work with me because they're just so driven to increase their financial acumen, but most of the time they're coming to me because they've hit such a bad place and they know they've got to change something. Oftentimes they're directed by lenders they're saying, you know what, we'd love to loan you some more money, but we really need to see some more credibility and management around financial acumen. So it's usually where those two things are kind of meeting. So anybody listening, it's not your fault if you don't know the financial side of your business, but you've heard me say it now, it's your responsibility. So what are you going to do now in this 2022 if you haven't already to really take the reins and run the financial side of your business properly?
What sort of things should they be looking at? What sort of courses? Obviously apart from doing sales, what sort of programs should they be doing to educate themselves financially?
So even kind of a test, like if you look at your year-end financial statements your accountant gave you, have you ever read them? Do you know what the things mean? Could you actually explain what they say to somebody else? That's a really good benchmark. So if not, you want to get some training so that you can actually learn the language of finance. It's just like learning another language. If we're going to go learn French or Spanish or something else, we're going to have to be really disciplined and learn the lingo, learn how to use it properly, learn what it means. We need to do that on the financial side of our business as well. Understanding a cash flow cycle is incredibly important, and every industry is different. And even within industries, as people set payment terms, they're going to have different cash flow patterns. So if I'm doing business with people, I usually charge them up front or upon some milestones so that I don't get to the end of a project and I've got some delays and no funds coming in. If I'm dealing with corporates, I know that it's going to take them a little bit longer than a smaller business to pay me. And so understanding with the people that you serve, how are they going to pay you, and how's that going to line up with the bills you've got to pay? And so simplest way I can explain cash flow, money comes in, money goes out. That timing that it happens is really the magic. And most standard frequency people are forecasting is monthly. But if you are in a tight cash flow situation, like some of those business owners we were talking about, you're either doing it weekly, and I know people who are doing it daily because they have to make sure there's enough money there on the day that bill is due. So find some training where you can get this base level knowledge and the actual practical implementation into your business where you're actually doing it. You don't need a consultant to map it all out for you. You need someone to train you so that you can put in place practices in your business. And by no means do I think people need to do it alone. I'm a huge advocate of business owners outsourcing the bookkeeping and working with accountants, but they need to then review those results and then see how they're going to incorporate them into their goals and strategy for the business.
I was just about to say that because there are probably many people sort of listening to this and watching this sort of saying, oh yeah, but I've got an accountant and that's what I pay them for. My own personal experience with accountants is a little checkered, quite simply because I'm not entirely sure they know what they're doing the best part of the time. And unfortunately, it's sort of like in what I do regularly, I've actually fired accountants because they just weren't servicing the business as they should. They forgot who the client was, i.e. they thought it was HMRC and not the actual client that was paying them.
That's pretty common, actually, to jump on that, because I've seen people go through multiple big bookkeepers, multiple accountants, waste lots of time, lots of money. So when you're finding a bookkeeper and accountant, make sure you get recommendations from people you know and trust and interview them. If they don't speak to you in a way that's comfortable, move on to the next one. If they're not willing to serve you, as well, the education piece. A lot of people think their accountants are supposed to train them on the financial stuff. Their job is to complete the financial statements and do your tax returns. If you want more than that, you need to talk to them about what are your expectations and do they actually want to provide that? Because many accountants aren't great on that, all explaining and having those value-added conversations and providing advice. Absolutely,
because it's and any working relationship should be a collaboration rather than anything else. And I often find that in an accountant and a business owner's sort of like relationship, there very much is an onus where the accountant speaks a very different language, and it's almost like a typical Brit abroad is the business owner starts shouting louder, just so that hopefully the accountant understands, and vice versa. You know, it's a very bizarre thing. And you're right. What you said is that it's nobody's fault when it comes to business finance, simply because, well, we weren't taught it. And in many schools nowadays, still here in the UK, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but here in the UK, we're not taught finance. You know, you turn 18 and you go off to university, and somebody gives you a great big loan to go and piss up the wall, put it in the bank account, and then you realize that after sort of like 6 months, you've spent 3 years worth of loan, and you go, how did that happen? I've no idea.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah, you need a license to drive a car, but there's no pre-qualifications to somebody handing you a lot of money and knowing how to use it responsibly.
Absolutely. So as we come out of the pandemic, how do you see business changing? Because hopefully some of the business owners that are watching this or listening to this are going to recognize that there is some work to do in the short term to start building up longer term funds, you know, for that emergency fund. How do you see business changing on the whole? Because from where I would sit, and logically, there's not going to be a huge amount of business growth in countries or in communities because people are hanging on to cash for a lot longer than they ever used to, because it's now the just in case rainy day fund, if that makes sense, rather than investing or buying or actually doing transactions.
Well, in Canada, at least, and I saw it in the US in 2021, because people thought the pandemic was coming to a close, there was actually an opening of the floodgates and people were spending like crazy. So I still firmly believe that if you're good at what you do and you target the right customers, you're always going to have some. So you've got to do a lot of work. If you haven't done it already, get really clear on what you do and how it's valuable. Find the people who will pay you for it and persist and stay resilient and go after it. But be really mindful of, do you need all these extra things that might be going on in your business? Do you maybe have like 5 different offerings and 3 are really low profit and nobody's really buying them and you're diluting your energy? Like, get back to basics, do what you do best. Focus on those customers, get rid of extraneous expenses. I think people have been adaptable at finding new ways to do work. So try not to go back to the old. If you don't need to have a physical presence and pay money on rent and insurance and furniture and all these other things, be nimble with your expenses, because we don't know what's going to happen. And when you're being nimble on your expenses, more will go in your pocket at the end of the day, and more can go into your emergency fund so that you can be prepared for the next thing that happens. Hopefully it's not a pandemic, but something's going to happen. There's all kinds of disruptions that come to different industries. And so having access to credit, which is an important one. And I saw that to be something that people weren't really focused on in advance. And so for anybody who's listening, if you're a brand new business owner, make sure you go out and secure credit as quickly as you can. And so when I started my business, I got a credit card, access to a line of credit right away. So I wasn't planning on using it, but I wanted my credit to be able to grow as my company grew. And I wanted to be able to start the clock on my credit history for the business, so that when there was going to be a greater need, I was ready and I wasn't going to some institution and them saying, who are you and what have you done? So having that access to credit, building up the cash is all going to be critical. And having a really great system. I personally think that business owners at least once a month should be looking at their numbers, but I think weekly is a great cadence. And I'm not talking about half a day a week. Let's start with 30 minutes in our calendar. Let's maybe the first week of the month we're doing our bookkeeping, or we're looking at the results in our bank accounts from the prior month. Probably by the second week, our bookkeepers got their bookkeeping done, and we can look at the income statements or sales and our expenses and see what's going on. Third week, let's do some cash flow forecasting. And if we keep a running cash flow forecast, we can just tweak it. Then we can actually kind of do some what if scenarios. And we were talking before we hit record around being able to know if you can afford something. And so if you're already doing cash flow forecasting and you've got an idea for a new strategy in your business, maybe you want to add another person and you're trying to figure out, can you afford it? You can pop that into your cash flow forecast. Okay, new salary. I think I'm going to have sales, but they're going to lag by a couple months. Within minutes, you're going to be able to see what's going to be the cash impact. And so then you can start planning. Well, you know what? I want to have maybe a month and a half of that salary saved up in advance. So let me do that. And then I'm going to be in a position to hire that person. So lots of stuff that can be done to put those routines in practice. The other thing too, kind of maybe the fourth week of the month, is you're actually going to look at some key performance indicators against your results and see, what do I need to keep doing? What do I need to make a change about? And then when you do that, you're not looking back in the rearview mirror for 18 months ago and trying to say, well, this is so old, it doesn't make sense to me anyway, and it doesn't have any bearing on my current reality.
So it was a really nice segue, because you mentioned it there, and we were going to talk. We were going to talk about it anyway. And yeah, let's be positive. Let's start looking at things as we come out of the pandemic. Yeah, I think the issue with the pandemic is that there's no end date to it. So none of us are really quite sure if we're coming out of it, when we're coming out of it. You know, obviously yourselves, you've just gone back into lockdown here in the UK. They're just hoping none of us die lately. So let's talk about, so we've got business owners that are going to be watching this. Let's talk about those sort of like how people can understand now, something really easy, so that they can look at something and go, I really need to do that. I really need to pay for that. I really need to see if I can afford that. How can they see if they can afford something in 5 minutes? This is your piece de resistance. Over to you.
So I'm going to put it under the caveat of, you do have some numbers at your disposal that you can look at. So you want to see sales minus your expenses. What have you got left? The other thing I highly encourage people to do is to actually look at their pricing and the profitability on each thing that they sell. So something you can just grab a piece of paper. You can do this right now, even while we were talking. Add up all the costs that go into you delivering whatever it is, your product or service. So what are the actual costs? If you're a service-based provider like me, make sure you're putting some time in there. Add on some margin for overhead. It's going to be anywhere from 10 to 40%, depends what industry you're on. But then see, how does your price actually line up with those costs? And most business owners never do this exercise. And so they could be losing money or just breaking even on everything that they sell. So that's going to be a very clear way to see, if I keep doing what I'm doing and I charge the same amount and my costs probably are escalating because everything gets more expensive, I've got to make a change there. And so whether it's adding more value and increasing the price, maybe it's targeting another type of clientele, the pricing is going to be where the secret is.
Right. Okay. So this is the thing. And again, this boils down an awful lot when I talk to other business owners and sort of like say, overheads in your business. What's the industry average? Where are they going to start looking for stuff like this? Because normally I get this ridiculously blank look where people, where it's almost like an old wives' tale. Oh, well, we've always done this. Well, why have you always done this? I don't know. It started 10 years ago. So where exactly do you get these numbers from? So where would you start researching things like overheads for industry averages and stuff like that? Yeah.
So if I was a business owner and I had a relationship with a bank, I would start with them, because they all have access to, it's usually through Moody's or other rating agencies. They've all got books, whether digitally or physical books, of all kinds of breakdowns of financial statements by industry with those industry averages. There's companies that they have subscriptions to. So I would start with my lender. If I don't have a lender, I would go to a small business association, even a chamber of commerce in my community, and see what access they can get for me. If you try to randomly check online and Google it, you'll find some information, but you have no way of knowing if it's true or not. I can Google and know if it seems accurate or not, but that's because I've got this frame of reference of all these legitimate sources that I've seen. So start with people that you know. Ask your accountant. This is another good place. So when you don't know the language of finance, you don't really know how to read your financial statements, a great question is, compared to other companies in my industry that you've seen, how am I doing? Are my margins in line with these other companies in the same industry? And put it on them. Whether they have the information at their fingertips or they can go and get it very easily, they're going to be able to provide you with those benchmarks. So start with credible sources and don't spend hours Googling.
Okay. That I think that goes for everything. We've all referred to Dr. Google, and we're all dying this time next week. Yeah. So I like to talk about positives. So entrepreneurs, what do they do right with their money that they actually just don't realize that they're doing, and they should be giving themselves a lot more credit for? What sort of things do they do right, and they kind of go, I just do that, Well, I ask them when I start working with someone or I meet someone, I say, well, how long have you been in business? And they'll tell me 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And if it's anything more than a couple of months, I'll tell them that they know how to manage cash flow.
And they look at me with shock and they say, no, I don't. I don't even know what cash flow is. And I said, but you do, because your business is still operational. You might not talk about it the way I do. You might not manage it very efficiently. You might be kind of by the seat of your pants, transferring every day to make sure you got money where it needs to be. But the sheer fact that you are in business is that you do have some, whether it's a subconscious understanding of cash flow, you're actually, you know, that cash flow cycle. And so I like to start from there, from that place of positivity, that they know what they're doing and we can actually do it better. We can do it with more intent and we can build on the positive that's already there. I like to talk about financial fitness. I think we're all on this lifelong journey. We're going to take small imperfect actions every day to increase our financial skills and knowledge. I learn new things every week because I also work with young adults. And so between my entrepreneur audience and my young adults, like I'm always learning new things. So when you're open to learning and you're willing to build on the foundation you already have, you're going to have a great future, I think.
Cool. Okay, so we're gonna finish off in a minute, Tracey. But what I want to do is, obviously, we're recording this at the start of 2022. The year is still new, and we have no idea what shitstorm we're going to get hit with this year. What are the three key things that entrepreneurs and business owners can do this year to make sure that they come out of 2022 in a far better state than they went into it?
Number one, bring up your financial acumen. So make sure you're actually getting the skills and the knowledge to put things into practice in your business. Number two, make sure you do analysis or have someone help you to understand where you are making your money. And you might find you're not making any money, so then you need to make some changes. So a lot of times this will lead people to reduce their offerings or to pivot or change them. So make sure your pricing and the costing all lines up and that you know where you're making money. And number three, don't be afraid to ask for help. When you get that financial acumen and you're understanding your numbers and you see there's a problem, go out and get the help that you need. Don't wait. I think if we've seen anything over the last few years, if you just put your head in the sand and wait, good things are not probably coming to you. But when you let other people know, you know what, I've got a problem, I don't know how to solve it, people will rally around. And I've never seen such a supportive community as those who support business owners. And whether it's government, chambers of commerce, industry associations, don't be shy in saying, you know what, I need some guidance or I need some help. Look for the free money. People are very good at sharing information about how to do things and how to get access to information, how to get free training. There's no shortage of resources out there, but you limit yourself when you don't go out and seek the help.
Tracey, thank you so much. And talking of resources, you are obviously a resource that people should be tapping into. Where can they find you, Trace? What sort of platforms and where can we find you?
Yeah, best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. So Tracey has an E, Bissett has 2 S's, 2 T's. From there, you'll see all my social handles. You'll be able to get to my website and would love to hear any comments or questions that people have. And just want to thank you again, Marc. It's been a pleasure talking about business finances and how people can actually take control and feel powerful and confident going into this year.
Tracey, it's been an absolute pleasure from this side of the pond to the other side of the pond. I hope you stay safe. I hope you guys come out of lockdown pretty soon. And thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is it for this particular podcast. Thank you so much for either watching or listening. It's really appreciated. And if you want to find out a little bit more about Tracey, go to the show notes, take a look at all the links and what she could do for you, your cash flow, your finances, and your business. If you want to get the business that your hard work truly deserves, go to my website, which is www.markford.uk. That's www.markford.uk. Eventually I'll get used to saying my own website, which would be quite handy. Go and follow all the social links, always hints, tips, ideas and strategies to help you get the business that your hard work truly deserves. Until next time, stay safe. Thank God that you're still here, and I will see you around very soon. Take care.